you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna record on Zoom, and then I've got my board also. Okay. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, anybody who's interested in mental wellness who might be listening, however you may be listening, wherever you may be listening to us. As I get a frog in my throat, this is outstanding audio. This is exactly why people tune in. Oi, well, this is Naga Notes, and it's a free podcast. You get what you pay for. So, we are joined by Ann de Passos, who is joining us from across the pond, as they say in England, somewhere in the UK. I don't know if you're in. Are you actually in England?
I am in London.
You're in,
Yes.
you're in London. Okay. Well, we got that out of the way. Anne has been on the show before, but it's been many moons ago. And Anne and I met through Noggin Notes founder Safisa Rapinga, but I can't remember why or how. So I'm going to let you tell that story if you can remember it. And then we're going to dive into what you're doing currently, which is, I think, very exciting. And it also is something somewhat new or emerging, I should say. And I think a lot of people are getting it wrong. So I'm being very mercurial on purpose because I don't want to steal your thunder. But tell us, Anne, who are you and why are you here?
I suppose I love the mysteries that life has to offer and the way that our paths ebb and flow and meet with each other. But Safisa and I went to school together. And then I can't exactly remember what was happening about 6 years ago, but we reconnected and realized that we actually had such similar fields of interest and we're talking about mental health. And I had started a social enterprise called Roots to Resilience, which was to help young people, predominantly in under-resourced
Yeah.
communities, to prepare for the world of work. And this felt really important to me because I was working at the time with a lot of 50-year-old men predominantly who are like, I'm not going to change my way. Whatever, people just need to suck it up. And why should I bother to change? They must just manage up rather than me managing down. I thought, no, I would like to start working with people younger to build that inner self-confidence and that resilience so that we start to aim for a sustainable version of high performance rather than this burnout high performance culture that I had found myself in quite often. And um and so that's how Sophia and I would that's what we were talking about at the time because he was also then working on around how do you create values and understand culture within organizations and build these healthier organizations. And now, 5.5 years later or so, Sophia and I have bumped into each other again through another mutual friend, Dwight Beer, and the three of us were chatting and realizing that life is taking us on similar journeys. And so rekindled that relationship and are chatting about how we are all playing this role of delivering a message to people of hope, of love, of uh, more sustainable ways of living and working um, in all very different ways, but it's still underlying is to create healthier environments, healthier communities, societies, so that we start to see transformation.
I like
Um,
that. That's awesome. Where'd you guys go to school together? Were you in Singapore?
no, in South Africa, in a little place
Oh,
called Nelspruit, now I'm Mpumalanga, Mbombela. Sorry,
wow.
Mpumalanga province,
Oh, when
yeah.
was that? How long ago was that?
Oh, come on, Jake.
Oh, come on. I'm older than both of you.
No, that was we went to school 2000 to 2004.
Wow. So like 25 years ago. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, it's been a
Wow.
long time.
How
So
did
I
you,
think
because you're originally from the UK, right? How'd you end up in South Africa? Are you from
no, no, no,
South
I'm
Africa?
South African, yeah.
Oh, I
And
didn't know that.
I moved here to the UK in 2016. Just as it felt like everything was imploding in the country, actually. Go
Yeah.
to the UK, land of promises and dreams, everything's wonderful. Woohoo! We're gonna go overseas, do 2 years of exploring and earning loads of pounds so we can take it back to South Africa and we'll just be loaded. And then Brexit happened, and since then, everything's just gotten really expensive, and
Yeah.
travel hasn't been quite as easy, and so many different administrative loops to jump through. So it's a little bit sad to watch the country's economy and political stance and be a bit
Yeah.
rocky. Yeah, doesn't feel quite as much at the land of honey, but
I wish I could tell you it's different over here. It's
mm,
not.
it
The
feels
United
close
States
to
is
me.
having its own implosion. Uh, yeah.
there is something happening over the world, across the world, and
Hmm.
that's partly what's stimulated Kim and myself to stop what we're doing. So
Yeah, let's
more
get into it. Yeah.
or serendipities, so to speak, that I was in South Africa running this program with Roots Resilience. I've I'd managed to have a child, which had been a very difficult journey for me to have a child. Had this child, was working really hard, and then just realized that the whole setup that I had with before wasn't quite where I wanted it to be or what I wanted. So m after going straight back to work after 4 weeks, when my child was 4 weeks old, I then took maternity leave at about when she was about 9 months old, and thought, okay, I'm probably not gonna have another child. I really wanted this child in my life. I'm working 16-hour days, and that's not really what I want for my life. So how do I change this around? So it wasn't the easiest decision I've had to make, but left Roots to Resilience and moved into a new block of flats where I met this wonderful neighbor called Kim. And we started talking about all these different things we've done with leadership development and transformation work. And every single time we had a conversation, it kept coming back down to the nervous system. Well, what states are we in? Like when a person is doing a presentation, they do an awful presentation. What states are they in? Oh, they either have gone into like a really fight flight kind of state, or they've gotten really small and collapsed, or they've frozen. And then whenever they're in that stage, you're disconnecting from the audience, you're disconnecting from your message, and so you bum out. Whereas when you saw brilliant leaders, and we were reflecting on people like Nelson Mandela, these brilliant leaders that have come into the world, like what state were they in? And we just realized like every single time they would be in this ventral state, that state where it's a nervous system state that we're talking about, where your body has the ability to get all your organs online. You connect with your prefrontal cortex. You are able to rest, digest. It allows you to problem solve, be creative in your thinking. It allows you to make long-term decisions. It allows you to connect with another person because when we are in any kind of threatened state, when our nervous system goes into that survival state, which is known as the sympathetic or the parasympathetic dorsal, when we go into either one of those states, we naturally shut down all of those other abilities so that we stay alive in this moment. But to stay alive in this moment actually means to disconnect from people around us,
Right.
because nothing is safe. It is just to survive. We're like, okay, there's something in this. How do we learn more about what it is to actually be human? We say put humans at the center, but then what does it actually mean to be human? What is happening to us at any one time? Um, and that's what's gotten us really interested in learning about the nervous system and then to teach from a nervous system first lens.
So you've got this, I guess it's called it would be called a company, I suppose, but the website is The View Looks Good. And I want to hear more about that and how it's structured. But before we get there, this nervous system thing is what I wanted to center on because it's emerging and I think people are getting it wrong. I am not knowledgeable enough in the entirety of the nervous system. I do emotional functioning and I think I do it quite well. But what you're talking about really, I think, is key because the more and more I get exposed to this type of literature and theory, is that if we don't have our nervous system in order, and yes, that does count the limbic system and our emotional functioning, we go all sorts of sideways from decision making to communication to confidence to digestion, like you mentioned, to circulatory. And then we can really easily link things to poor physiological ailments, right? So, we talk about the mind-body connection. We've known forever and ever that the mind can manufacture physiological symptoms or physiological uh, executions, so to say. So, for the listening audience, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll run through a real quick demonstration here. If you clear your mind, if you're driving and you're listening to this, please keep your eyes on the road. But clear your mind. You don't have to close your eyes, but think about a lemon and think about slicing into that lemon, taking a wedge of the lemon and then biting into it. And chances are you get a little tingle in your mouth somewhere. You may actually salivate, but there's no lemon. You've got the physiological experience of salivating. You got spit, saliva coming through your mouth. There's no lemon. It's in your mind, right? But what your mind is doing is creating a nervous system response, which then creates an endocrine response. And if we're in a stressed state, what ends up happening is because the mind is creating the stress state. We perceive things and then we make decisions or interpretations based on our perceptions. So if I perceive that I'm quote unquote under pressure from work or family or whatever it is, my brain will excrete chemicals, these neurochemicals like cortisol and adrenaline and norepinephrine and epinephrine. They will do certain things. And if I'm constantly in that state, I will deteriorate my actual physical body because those chemicals aren't supposed to be there for long periods of time. They're supposed to be there for short periods of time, like I said, to handle a crisis or whatever. So for me, this is really fascinating stuff. I don't know enough about it, and I want you to help teach for a few minutes on some of the ins and outs and the intricacies of why nervous system first, which is your phrase, and it's all over your website, is so important. So with that as the tee up, would you mind teaching a little bit beyond, above and beyond, and then also contrast some of the bad work that you've seen out there, some of the pop psychology that stands in for actual research and actual science, because I've seen some of that too, and I look at the at first glance, I go, "This is hogwash. This is not true. This is just somebody's idea. They're trying to make a TikTok video go viral out of it." But if you try to do this thing, you're gonna crash and burn, right? So the floor is yours, ma'am. You're the guest,
Thank you, Jake. Um, Probably
and feel
I'll
free to correct me too if I'm all wet.
No, no, no. I want to just one of the big practices that we have is to look for what we love, like, and admire in everything and in everyone we come across. And it's part of linking it with Atta Sharma's work on Theory U of often if we look at the world with fear, judgments, and cynicism, we are going to find ourselves creating that threatened state in our lives. So the way to counter it is to say, I look at the world with curiosity, compassion, and courage. I look at people with curiosity, compassion, and courage. So I smile a little bit there because I think there is a lot of perhaps pop culture out there. There's a lot of things that are maybe questionable, but I think it's also a lot of people are exploring and trying to make sense of the world. And if the intention is there, then it's not all totally lost. And there's stuff that we can learn from everyone in the world. But if the intention is probably just set on what can sound cool so I can make money off of you and try and suck you dry, I struggle to see the compassion, the courage, and the
Yeah.
curiosity in those moments. But that said, that's why actually quite a lot of it is I don't know if we're doing it wrong or if it's more that one, we've forgotten how to look inward and understand our bodies. So it's about relearning it. A lot of what Kim and I do is very ancient wisdom. And what's come out of the view looks good has been to say, let's combine this science that's helping us understand the body, but with a lot of the ancient wisdom that came from many tribes, many communities, um, all over the world. So
That
so
we simply don't
I think
teach anymore either, I would say, because
we
it's
don't.
it's either been lost or it's been forgotten or we've misplaced focus because you can't make money off it or something like that. But I would say we don't
Yeah.
get that much.
No, we don't. And then we wonder why we've got all these diseases happening and we've got all these ailments um and so yeah. So there are definitely things that seem dysfunctional in the world, but I also believe that it's part of helping us to evolve as we become clearer on what the dysfunctions perhaps we're noticing in the world. It goes, okay, that's our opportunity to have a look at this. That's our opportunity to evolve. So very positive psychology approach that Kim and I have, and what we feel is being drawn out of the view looks good from us. Um, our work and why we started with nervous system first is that because when we can tune into ourselves, into our physical sensations, our thoughts, and our emotions, it can become very clear which nervous system state we're in. And once we know which nervous system state we're in, we can know then how to respond to ourselves. So if you are in a ventral state, if you're in that state of balance, which by the way, is our natural state. That's where we are naturally drawn to go into eventual states. We're naturally looking to be in that state of balanced safety, aliveness, a grounded energy. But if we perceive threats, we move out of that, which is quite a nice thought, that that means that if threats around us, if we don't perceive threats around us, then we move into eventual state.
Yeah,
But if
that's. Let me interrupt real quick because this is really important. For me, at least, we work with a lot of mentally disordered people, right? In the U.S., if you want to bill insurance for treatment, you have to have a diagnosis. The diagnosis is a disorder. Many of these disorders come from not what you might think where they're episodic, threw your life off for a little bit, and then we're trying to rebounce them back. A lot of them are long-standing patterns of maladaptive behaviors. In other words, responses to environments that are quite toxic. So a child raised in a home of family, a family with violence and neglect and abuse. There, a lot of these folks have convinced themselves, and it is a story that they tell. They've convinced themselves that that is their natural state. So when you're saying our natural state, you're talking about humanity's natural state is not to live in a constant fight or flight zone. It's to be at peace, not perceiving threats, because most of the time, especially in the West, where we're surrounded by opulence mostly, we're not under threat. But if you come from a family like that or an environment like that, it can certainly create a perception that threats are everywhere. And then we know of things like confirmation bias, where we'll seek out reason to believe what we already think we know. So can you speak a little bit to that, like how you might work with somebody to return them to the natural, and I mean natural with a capital N state, as opposed to what they think is their natural state? Like, how does that work?
I think it's so important the work that therapy is doing as well, for this. So again, Kim and I are not therapists and we're not trained in
Sure.
psychology, which is why we wouldn't necessarily um facilitate this conversation. But for therapists and for people out there who are supporting people with these significantly traumatic upbringings that they've had, when you are noticing that you are looking for threat everywhere around you and you're acting from that threat, it is your body letting you know that there's still something that has been wounded. There's still something that is threatening. So it is, you actually are taking a really important response, because somewhere in your physiology, there is an understanding that my life is not safe. So it is so important to get the help, to seek that professional help, to work through years and years and years of suffering, of threat that you have or one has experienced, because in doing so, and maybe sometimes I do believe in the importance of using medication at times if there are hormone imbalances in your body and you don't know how to regulate your own hormones, and those hormones are creating a perception around you that you are in a threatened state. So
Sure.
together with the use of people and with modern medicine and again with ancient wisdom, I think there are ways to work through these so that we can create environments around us that we can perceive as safe, and that capital N, that natural state of
Yeah, I
safety.
appreciate that. Thanks. What is your training or background? What's the credential or degree or whatnot? What do you guys have to that led you to this direction?
My background's actually in organizational psychology, and I did an organizational psychology degree in the University of Cape Town. And then I went on to get into organizational development. So my focus has been predominantly in the organizational space and working with leaders for the last 15 years, working with leaders, organizational structures, culture, HR departments, people departments, to see how do we help to create healthier environments within the workspace. So there hasn't been a medical background in my
A-
studies at all.
And Kim, what's her background?
She is in charity
Oh,
and communications. So she works a lot in fundraising, actually. Her
okay.
background is predominantly in fundraising and how to support people in terms of their pitching and looking for donations.
Right
So
on.
she, yeah, so her background has also not been with a medical or psychological background.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Just want to get that out of the
Just
way. So, on
which
with the
which for
show.
us is really important because it is to say that this is not um
It's
well,
not
I suppose
special information. It's not inaccessible. Yeah.
exactly. Anybody can access this. And actually, that's the thing. The wisdom is within us. Some guidance is helpful. And I think it is important to have community because doing this by ourselves is very difficult to know what am I actually perceiving as reality versus some kind of warped
Yeah.
reality.
Yeah.
Um, and so this idea is if our natural state is a ventral state, if that's what we are naturally trying to work towards, when we perceive threats, whether real or not, we would move first into that sympathetic state. So that's in that fight flight. It's a very active, I'm going to dominate this. One way, either I dominate you or I run really fast out of here, or I'm going to be so like, oh man, Jake, you're amazing. Yeah,
It's
great
true, though.
idea. It is true. But a real fawn of I don't know how else to do it. And I'm speaking a lot with women at the moment and like often women feel like this with men. And there are some scary things out there where women are feeling really I talk about myself in this is like I can find myself in a certain situation where I'm so petrified, and I don't know where it comes from because I haven't had an awful experience happen to me, but I am petrified. So I believe it's probably either societal or ancestral of what to do. So what happens then? Giggle, you're so funny, you're amazing. Okay, how do I be really cool about this right now so I can just get through this situation? And that would be your sympathetic nervous system happening. And any of those behaviors that you're observing, the heat in your body, the more just noticing your body language is getting really loud, your voice changing, all of that is just a signal to let me know, okay, I'm feeling a bit threatened in this moment. And if I'm feeling threatened in this moment, then I can have a look at what is the thing that I'm observing that makes me feel threatened. Is it something I'm picking up in the other person? Is this a story or belief that I've held from past experiences? Is this societal brainwashing? I mean, it's our education that we've received, but what is it that is actually going on here that is sending a signal to my nervous system to say run, fight, or fawn? And work with that. If, if often this can happen in a very regulated way. So if you do come across somebody who's carrying a knife who looks like they're going to hurt you, the fact that your body can jump into some kind of sympathetic state, go, I'm going to jump onto the other side of the road and get on out of here. I'm not going to put myself into any sort of threatened state, is a wonderful thing. So we want our bodies to be able to move from ventral to sympathetic. And then the dorsal would be where our body quietens down into a really small kind of collapse state. And in a good in a healthy regulated way, that's what sleep is. Like we need to be able to shut down at the end of the day to rest and recover and digest. But what can happen in a less regulated or dysregulated way is that we perceive threats. Fighting hasn't really worked. Running away hasn't really worked. This threat is just overwhelming. It's not going away. So I collapse. I become small. And what we're noticing in the workspace is that you'd see people who are just disengaging with meetings. They go really small in that space. They don't speak up, often absent. They just don't pitch up to work. Like they're physically not there. They are mentally not in that space because they're perceiving their environment as being a threat. And that's a very dysregulated regulated nervous system then, is that you haven't worked through the threat, so you're staying stuck in that space where your body's collapsed. And that's where we can go and move ourselves into being smaller, being more depressed, having unhealthy lifestyles. And with the sympathetic or this dorsal state, if we stay there, if we stay stuck there, then we start to notice digestive issues, chronic fatigue, different ailments start showing up because our body isn't able to regulate itself. And then dysfunctions in our relationships, noticing broken relationships, either with partners, children, in the community, noticing habits like excessive drinking or substance abuse in general. It just, those habits start to become the impact of not having worked through a threatened state and allowed it to finish and come back to eventual state. It's I've experienced a threatened state that stayed with me, that stuck with me. It's now still no, it's like it feels like it's just stuck in your body. Like you've still got that anxiety, or you've still got that fear, or you've still got that adrenaline that's going around, and you never release it. And then you add something more and something more and something more. So if you're going to the workplace every day and there's a relationship that's really toxic and you're not dealing with it and you don't know how to approach it and nothing's working and you've avoided the person and now you're starting to really resist going to the workplace because you don't want to see that person, that's going to start having knock-on effects on the quality of your work, your decision making, your creativity, your
Right.
relationships.
Right, because you're hyper attuned to the thing that you perceive as the threat. Uh, we keep using that word, and in my ears it means something, and I think in other people's ears it may mean something else. I know you don't necessarily, do therapy, quote unquote, but you're teaching this to organizations, right? That's what you're doing. So when people inevitably shoot a hand in the air and they ask something like, how do I deal with somebody who refuses to acknowledge the threat because that word is like a dirty word or it makes them think that they're weak or something like that? How do you respond? Because I can think of lots of people who are like, if I explain this and they're like, yeah, you're just in a threatened state. Like, no, I'm not. Nothing around me threatens me, right? It's almost like saying, it's just insecurity. You don't know who you are, so you're going to use these defense mechanisms. Like very similar, uh, but they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear that they're insecure. They don't want to hear that they're in a threatened state. How do you approach that?
And also because that is threatening in itself to have somebody
It
say,
is.
"Oh,
It is.
you're in a
Yeah,
threatened
yeah.
state." I mean, you've just set the somebody's nervous system to go.
Yeah.
I've been seen. I'm abort, abort,
Yep.
abort. So, um, I think the first thing is that we don't have to m make somebody change. It's never about making the other person change. It's about acknowledging yourself in that moment. So if you happen to be working with somebody and you notice that um it let's say they've got the problem, right? We're perfect. They've got the problem. We want them
Of
to see
course.
their
Of
problem because we
course.
want them to
Yeah.
change. That's exactly what he's saying is
Follow me. I know the answers.
yeah. I'm noticing that I'm wanting you to change, right? I'm noticing that I'm getting all like, you need to change, you've got the problem. So I start there actually. Why is that bothering me? Why is somebody else's behaviors bothering me?
Well,
What
maybe
is
it's because you're the boss and they're being unproductive, right? Something like that.
that could happen. So, what is it that you're noticing though with their approach? Okay, there's two things though with unproductivity. Unproductivity or productivity is a byproduct. So if a person isn't being productive, what is it that is getting in the way that they cannot be productive? And either they don't know what they're supposed to do, they
Right.
don't know how to do what they're supposed to do, or they lack the motivation to do what they're doing. So if you're the manager of somebody in the team who's not being productive, I suppose the easiest things to check on your list is, do they actually know what they're supposed to do and do they know how to do it? That could
Yeah.
be very easy to address those. The third one around motivation is a bit more tricky because what is it that you're actually observing that is bothering you so much? And the more we can become aware of ourselves and become comfortable to open up and create the space for somebody else to be unproductive or to be in that state and then work through it. That's how we help them to work through it. But when we try and confront somebody to say you have to change, we haven't allowed them the space to change.
Yeah.
Um, so well, our approach, we have a kind of step philosophy or a four part philosophy. And that is first is to become aware of your own nervous system. Um, and no, like become aware, understand how the body works, understand how you are responding. And that's really around looking at your physical sensations, your thoughts, and your emotions. Notice those and notice what they tell you about your own state. Because everybody else, whatever they're doing, if that's triggering you to go into a threatened state, you need to know that about yourself. So before you try and change anybody or you want them to make the change, just know it about yourself. Become aware so that you know how to respond to yourself. And that is super important if we want to relate to other people. So if we want to help other people to move out of their own dysregulated states, out of their dysfunctional behaviors, then we need to know how to stay grounded and respond to our own nervous systems when we're with them. Because if we're not, then when we're around those people, we're going to become dysregulated, and then we
Or you
don't,
escalate, right? Because
and
you
then
can
it'll
escalate each
escalate.
other. Mhm.
Exactly. And the fourth part of this is that that's when we create. Obviously, we're creating all the time, but for that really meaty transformational creation to happen is when we're all able to sit in that ventral space of feeling safety, of being able to access a wisdom that comes from something greater than ourselves. So those are the four parts. And then we liken it to being in a drawbridge, being drawbridges. So if you think of all of us as being drawbridges, when our drawbridges are down with each other, it's like that's when we make our connection. And that's where information can flow, that's where connection can happen between people, that's where ideas can flow. That's that's when we can influence each other, is when our drawbridges are down. And for our drawbridges to be down, it's when I'm in a ventral state and when the other person's in a ventral state. So we can really, we that's when we connect. And in that state, there's space to breathe, there's space to share, there's space to talk about failures, insecurities, there's the space to talk about opportunities, the space to talk about strengths. Um, and all of that can be on the table. And from there, we will be able to engage and create beautiful things. If we experience threat, that's when we pick our drawbridge up. And the minute our drawbridge is being picked up, we lose that connection with somebody else. So if you were to have a bad day, for example, your morning started off poorly, flat tire, um, didn't get your morning beverage of choice,
Can't
you
stand
walked
when I
in.
have flat hair.
You walked into the office, you engage in, you're already in a bad mood. You've walked into the office with your drawbridge up.
Yeah.
What you're signaling to somebody else is, oh, that person's in a threatened state. I'm going to put myself in a threatened state. So you send somebody else's drawbridge to go up. And when our drawbridges are up and we're trying to communicate with each other, we get nowhere. That's where the escalation happens, is because I'm not listening to you. I'm not really hearing what you're saying. I'm doing it from my own space, and so I'm just speaking at you, or I'm actually connected perhaps with any past wounds that I might have. I am I am therefore not listening, and I'm also not really sharing. And so none of us are in a place where we're going to be moving forward with a connected in that same connected state. And that leads to escalation and disruption and dysfunction in the workplace when we're working like that. In what we're noticing is in any relationship. So the antidote to this, and what we'd normally like to say is, can the other person please put their drawbridge down so that I can put my drawbridge down? Like, you, come on, please, can
Right.
you
You
put your
go
drawbridge
first.
down?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Show me that it's safe to be around you. And what we're wanting to teach and what we are teaching, what we're wanting to impart, should I say, is to let people know, like, anchor your own drawbridge. Find your own safety in that moment. And it doesn't have to be that you go and confront somebody with a knife, for example, in the street, because nothing bad's going to happen to me. But it's to know my
It's
own
okay to have
safety.
your drawbridge up sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It's the know that said, like, I'm okay with this decision. I know this is a good decision for me to walk away. And maybe sometimes you will be inspired to be able to walk up to the person who is in a really irate space because you've got the skill set, the toolkit to be able to engage with that person. But if you're going to engage with that person to be the hero, well, you're not really going to connect with them. If you're engaging with that person because you are so scared about what they're going to do, you want to just take them down, you're not really going to make the best decisions in that moment. But if you can bring your drawbridge down, if you can find your own ventral state in this, and by doing so, you understand what is creating the threat to me. Can I respond to that? What's my toolkit that I have to be able to respond to that? Okay, I can stay grounded in this. I've offered myself self-care, and I can offer the other person a space to be them without being harmed by them. As we do that, we hold our drawbridge down. It allows somebody else to bring their own drawbridge down. The consistency of you holding that space allows another person to bring their drawbridge down. And in doing so, we create the connection again. And that's not always instant. Sometimes it can. Sometimes I can notice how I can walk into a room and be like, "Oh, I can feel tension in here. Okay. I don't have to I don't have to be consumed by the tension. I can find my own grounding in this room, and I can walk up to somebody and I can connect with them and I can watch how their drawbridge slowly comes down. Oh, and then they can start to breathe and the tension starts to dissipate in the room. And that's what we're talking about is that how do we create that that kind of situation, that space for somebody else?
I really like this because it's giving me new terminology, and I love the metaphor, the analogy there with the drawbridge is great. Um, it gives me something else to share as opposed to limbic logic because it's not either limbic or logic. There's a lot of limbic emotion that goes into having one's drawbridge up and perceiving threats, but it's not necessarily just that. So this is really good. The thing that I'm stumbling on here, I think that I could see as a frustration is you're essentially asking people to take personal accountability and not blame the circumstance, the environment, another person, the situation, the cosmos, my Sagittarius for acting up, whatever it may be, right? It's taking personal accountability for one's own response to all those things. It is ancient, right? I mean, I think it was Epictetus who was originally credited with saying it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you respond to what happens to you. And in today's culture, it just seems like we've lost that entirely. We're just way more interested in blame shifting than we are personal ownership of response to environment. Do you find that is that frustrating? Are you finding that present in some of these environments where you go and you're teaching this stuff? Are people yes butting what you're talking about? Yes, but they need to do it first. Yes, but it's not my fault. Yes, but like they get it, but they don't want to move forward because they don't like being vulnerable or what have you.
It can happen. Actually, we start off our programs often with how we would normally want to like we would have the perfect life if only we would
Right,
be
right.
successful if only. So we normally try and get that out on the table straight away. Is that it's very normal that
Okay.
that we look at the world if only everything else was around. But actually, that's why we find this work really powerful. Is because yes, we are asking people to take ownership but not to take on more load. We're asking people to take on more ownership so that they give themselves more space. They
Mm-hmm.
actually give themselves um like a bigger bucket to
Yeah.
be able to cope with more, to be able to um, there's a term in polyvagal theory around the window of tolerance to be able to tolerate more, not in the sense of like, okay, I tolerate you, but oh, like that's not so difficult.
Yeah.
That difficult conversation in the workplace, that wasn't so difficult. I didn't have to spend a week in absolute anxiety waiting to have the conversation because I could feel into myself. I could understand, okay, this is why this person is triggering me. I could find my own growth and development, and I could invite the other person into a growth experience with me. And so the difficult conversations, whilst they aren't just swimming down a stream, they might be a bit of a walk up a mountain. It's still a more enjoyable process, and we've removed the noise. People are removing their own noise. So it's not riddled with so much work to take accountability. Actually, I remove that noise and I can confront things more easily. So I think that one of the big things we're noticing is the readiness of somebody to do this. So we don't
Mm-hmm.
push our work on anybody. We would go into an organization and we won't even insist on top-down leadership changes in the sense of the ideal person for this is the person who wants to live more intentionally and to see this done differently. And in doing so, like you might be the team member within the team who starts to practice this more. And in so doing, you're regulating nervous systems around you and you're influencing and you're creating more space within the team. And then you start to influence the whole culture of an organization. So yes, of course we can get people who'd be like, "Oh no, I'm not into this stuff. That's far too much work. I'd rather pop a pill or I'd rather stay stuck in my victim space because it's wonderful to be here. It gives me purpose. I know this narrative. I don't have to explore something else."
It's easier.
Uh it is. It can feel easy. It can feel easier. I don't actually
Yeah,
know if it is
yeah.
easier.
Easier as in predictable, not necessarily easier as in desirable.
Yeah. And there, to give my space of we don't know if people are doing it wrong. Like we won't say if people are doing it wrong. It's like great, I've got space for you to be there. If that's what what you need to do for yourself for right now, that's okay. And when you're ready, we're here.
Yeah.
When you want to do something, we're here. And one of the things that we are playing with as well is just to be able to hold space for each other and for humanity. Um, in the sense of if we can send more of that good energy out to the world, and create that space energetically between us for the people around us, that it starts to have knock-on effects on other people, which this part can sound very tree huggy and um, I don't know, idealistic, but I am an idealist.
No, I think it's empirically supported. I mean, we got lots of research about, I mean, some people make too much of it, but mirror neurons, like I know from looking at your facial expressions what you're going through. I know that from Izzard's research, which I teach about emotional functioning. I can tell what you're feeling by your facial expression. If you're affectively flat though, and I can't tell what you're experiencing, it's very hard for me to reciprocate and validate and be present and, you know, be in your presence even. Similarly, if you're bringing an energy, if you're bringing a type of presentation to our conversation and it's happy and for the listening audience, and who knows if this will ever even make it onto YouTube, Anne's been smiling the whole time. Like maybe like 1/2 of 1% when she kind of got serious, the smile went away from her face. But like it brings out in me a desire to smile, except I'm trying not to because I'm trying to focus on what she's saying so I can respond appropriately. Because if I'm just like happy joy, my brain shuts off, which is fine because sometimes we need to do that. But the point is that through my mirror neurons, I will end up reflecting what she's presenting. If she's scowling and dour and unhappy, that's gonna bring that out in me too, unless I have the self capacity, self-awareness, and desire to override that and say, I don't care what your negativity is, I'm gonna bring my own to the table, which is really what you're touching on. And I think this is really powerful because, like you say, it doesn't have to be top down, it doesn't have to be management said so. In fact, it probably won't work. In my experience, it very rarely works if management says, we're going to change culture and here's how we're going to do it. Um, People want to respond organically, and the best way to respond organically is to be drawn in through invitation to something that looks desirable. So if you got somebody who's just a big ball of joy all the time, it's pretty hard not to be joyous around that person. If you got somebody who's a big ball of negative parasitic suck energy, you're gonna you're gonna reflect that too. So I don't think it's just necessarily optimism for its own sake. I mean, I think we've studied this stuff enough to realize that when people interact, um, the the unaware and the unwilling, which really most of us are in that state most of the time, we're going to get sucked in without knowing it to whatever the bigger energy is that the person's bringing to the room. So the idea here, as I'm understanding, is you're inviting people, no matter where they are on the chain of hierarchy or the flow chart in the organization, to take personal ownership and bring themselves into the environment with all positivity, a capacity to receive, a capacity to entreat others with love and compassion and support and respect and curiosity and humility. And I think that's wonderful because I think it will beget in turn, like you say, others doing it also. And maybe that has to ripple up from the bottom. Maybe it ripples down from the top. I don't know. But
Yeah.
the point is, it's just a standing invitation. And I love that. I love that it's hands off. It's not attached. It's what every major religion has taught across time. It's what all the philosophers have talked about. It's what our field, my field, stands on, which is the ethical precept of autonomy. You know, you can't make anybody do anything. You got to recognize that people are in charge of themselves for better or for worse. So, um, this is great. I want to hear though, can you teach me in like 5 minutes about what polyvagal theory is? Because I've never studied. I've seen it bounced around. Admittedly, I'm totally ignorant to what it is.
Polyvagal theory is just what we've been speaking about, is
Oh,
understanding
okay. Well, then we can
we've
move
got
on.
multiple nervous systems. Exactly. And if we've got multiple nervous systems, um, it's what you said right at the beginning of we like our words can influence our body and our body influences our words. So based on where we can move our nervous system or we can move into different nervous system states. And then by moving into different nervous system states, that can affect the way we think, that can affect what we do. So it's playing around with this idea of we don't always have to be um, influenced just by the environment or whatever is around us, is that we can actually choose which state we want to be and then start to influence the people and the environment around us.
So it does become a choice. I mean, there's a part of personal awareness and part of personal accountability there, but also a decision, an affirmative decision to engage in this type of representation of self, I might call it. This I gotta say it. It folds in nicely with what I teach from a Jungian psychodynamic perspective, whereby the idea is that we're divine creatures, and if we're divine creatures, we have limitless capacity for all things, and that includes the great and the terrible. But if we have limitless capacity, it means that we, like the bucket you're talking about, like make the bucket bigger. I can change my language to I can handle whatever's happening. I can bring more positive energy. I can influence people in a productive way. It becomes a choice and a decision. So then, therefore, I'm not beholden to what anybody else brings in. You want to storm in and be a negative rain cloud in my work environment. I don't. I can choose not to suck into that. I can choose to stand on my own and be like, well, I'm going to shine my light. You want to be dark? That's fine. That's on you. So we're not attached to it, and also make a standing invitation. Hey, I'm going to be light over here. You want to join me in the light? More power to you, right? But I'm not going to force you to come over. So I
Yeah.
like all this. I like the insight. I like the awareness. I like the neurological research behind it. Um, there's something I was
And
going
maybe
to ask. It just escaped me. Go ahead.
just something on that, Jake, is that we talk a lot about nervous system toning, and it is a bit of a muscle. So it is a choice, but it can be really difficult to make those choices if you don't know what
Yes.
ventral feels like. If you don't know how to access that, if you don't know when you're in that state, and instead you're doing something from a sympathetic state of, I can do this. Yes, I can do this.
Yeah, yeah.
That that level of sympathetic response is not actually necessarily effective. It's not motivating and it's not going to see the
Well, it's
change.
short-lived too, right? Like there's a time and place for that, like on a football field. I got to go tackle the running back, right? But it's like
Yeah.
it's a gas tank. It'll expire at some point.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you look at the greats of any sports, they also do it so often that it's not so much of like, I got to do it. It's like, oh, I just know this. I just know how to go back and do it. And that's what makes them so brilliant compared to an amateur who's like,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember what I was going to ask. The definitions of ventral and dorsal. I mean, because I can think like parts of the body, dorsal is rear, whatever. But like when you say ventral state, what is that? Is it a calm state? Is it a logic state? Is it a state of self-awareness? Like what do you mean by that?
so your ventral state is when your ventral vagal nervous system is activated and just in terms of your body, and that is where we feel a sense of calm, balanced connectedness with other people. So our energy is regulated. That's in that state, that's when we can access our prefrontal cortex and we can access connection with others to allow for that wisdom to come in. So if you're grappling with something, to be able to get into a ventral state, you would then find those answers like, oh, I actually can do this. Oh, this is going to be okay. Not from a knowing, not from a head level, but from almost something that kind of bubbles through your body, which isn't exactly the question you asked me. The definition of ventral, though, is to be able to get your nervous system into the ventral vagal state, which means that our body then is connected with our prefrontal cortex, our heart, our breathing, everything is regulated. You can feel a sense of calm in your body. You can feel spaciousness. in your thoughts. They generally are more positive, more concise. You can stick on one thought process at a time. You don't jump from one thing to the next. And emotionally, you feel lighter. There is a
Yeah.
lighter feeling in ventral. Your sympathetic, which is your next one that you go to if you're feeling threatened, that state sets off the adrenaline and the cortisol, and it is to say that you are now heightened alert. You switch off from your prefrontal cortex to just focus on the here and now to survive this. You cut off the connections with other people so that you yourself stay alive. Um, and how that can feel in your body. You can feel your heart rate increasing. You can feel your body temperature going into increasing. You can feel your thoughts jump from one thing to the next, or be very, very focused. Can only see one way. So if you think about it being in a meeting with somebody else and you're in this hyper focused threatened state, I can't hear your perspective at all. I can only repeat and tell you mine, and probably repeat that you are not listening to me in my head
Yeah.
because I'm just focused on that one place. Um, your feelings can be a lot more around fear, anxiety, and yeah, it has quite a jumpy feel to it, or a very aggressive feel to it. You might notice if you're engaging with somebody that they dominate the situation. This is how it's going to be. This is how we're
Yeah.
going to do it. If you're parents, this is bedtime right now. There's no question mark about it.
I
We'd
have
enter
no
the
idea what you're talking
okay.
about.
Yeah, never done that one. That'd be very sympathetic, or when like, oh, maybe you can have it. I don't really want to have the tantrum, so I'm just gonna let you have um every treat you ask for. That would be a sympathetic state. I can't hold on to anything. I jump from one thing to the next. In the workplace, you can see people avoiding work. You just like physically, our bodies, we move ourselves out of the room. Just, oh, I'm going to avoid this. It's somebody else's job. And then the dorsal, that's the parasympathetic dorsal nervous system gets activated. That's the one that's activated when you if you were thinking about yourself being an animal in the savannah, you're not going to um beat that tiger or outrun that or not that there's tigers in the savannah. A lion or a cheetah. There you might freeze. Not freeze has got a different connotation, but you would go really small so that you can't be seen. You would camouflage yourself into something really small so that you just are not something that can be caught really.
Right.
That and in the workplace in our lives, what we do is we just become really quiet. Body language is to curl up, to become small, head down. You can feel yourself actually getting quite cold extremities a lot of the time because
Mm,
you
hmm.
can't actually send blood out to the rest of your body. Your thoughts become very negative. Um, oh, nothing's going to work. Why bother? You can't do it. And so that's what's happening in and around your body at any one time. And the freeze is actually an interesting one because that's when you're having a lot of sympathetic internal dialogue, but you actually can't get your body to move. So,
Right.
you have like this dorsal response, but a sympathetic internal dialogue, and I find that's one where we actually need the most release. So when our body experiences threats, if you think about an animal in the savannah, run, 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 run. The running is over. You've perhaps been caught. You lie there dead, playing dead, and then everything quietens down and your lion disappears because it thinks that it's done its business, and your body takes time to slowly come back to life, and you've got to run it out, and then an animal will run. It will like release all of that tension, all of that energy that it's just had. It releases it, and then you can come back to eventual state. So that's happening to us as in the workplace, in our relationships in society, is that we experience perhaps somebody's been aggressive around us. You don't necessarily react, but your body has gone through a threatened state. So adrenaline has been released, cortisol, you've had this perhaps internal argument that's just happened, but it's all in your body.
Yeah, and
Or
it's got to go somewhere.
it's got to go somewhere. So if we don't release it physically, we might take it out on our loved ones, start shouting at them because this is stuck with us. But it's why
Totally.
things like exercise are brilliant. Like we do intuitively know this stuff. We have exercise, we do include movement, we have people who we can talk to. Those things were intuitively built into our societies, and now we've forgotten really what we're doing. And instead of just thinking about what does your body need to release, what exercise would be useful, we say you've got to get into running. Running is the most important, or cycling. Cycling is what you have to do. You have to do cycling. And so you don't listen to what exercise your body's asking for or for release. We're just trying to fit into what the mold of what society says you should be doing. So our practice would be listen to your body, go for a run if that's what it feels like you need to do, or maybe push weights. If
Yeah.
like maybe you're just needing to push against something. Mine is dancing. It's almost always dancing. Go dance, like run it off. That would be a way to release it. But yeah, there's lots of different techniques.
So I know you got a hard out. You got to go get children, but I want to ask. Uh, I see a stacking effect occurring in a lot of people where they don't have the outlet or they're off gassing, but they're not actually attending to what they need to do. So, I might yell and scream, but I didn't actually attend to what I've been carrying, what I failed to address, right? And then we cycle it back up the next day. Or we think that we're having the conversation. We're talking to a friend about it, but really we're just pinging negativity off of each other, and we're calling it resolution, but it's not. All it is just a swirling feedback loop. Or worse, we're glued to social media, which is full of negativity and doom and gloom and threats and violence, and the world is ending. I mean, we kicked this conversation off with you saying that you moved to London, and it was like, oh, this is going to be great. Oh, no, it's not. And and it's like everywhere you look, every newspaper you open, every headline, there's something threatening, right? So unplugging from social media, I'm just going to jump to what my conclusion is. Unplugging from social media would be a great way to do this, but how do you advise people actually deal with, and how do they know that they've actually addressed the internal fight, the tension at the office, and that they're not just pretending or falsifying it?
The short answer would be that you would know because you would still have something running around and rolling around and bothering you, and it would
Uh,
you would
so you got to be
notice it.
honest with yourself,
You
right?
have to.
Yeah.
But this is why Kim and I have started practice groups. So we have practice groups that meet Mondays, Tuesdays, and Fridays. Not ideal times for the States because it's 12:30 in the afternoon here in the UK. But we'll
Yeah.
look to change those times.
You're just gonna have to
More
stay
and
up later.
more.
Sorry.
Yeah.
2 in the morning.
But but it is difficult to be honest with yourself when you're in it. And when Kim and I first started chatting, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm so often in ventral." I had not realized how often I was jazz handsing. And now, like, I'm quite an expressive person, as you may have noticed on this conversation. So there is a natural level of expressiveness. But I was like, notice me, woo, look, I'm a great facilitator. You only want me. And I hadn't noticed that. I was just thinking that that's what I needed to do. So it is hard to be honest with yourself when you really do believe you're doing the best you can, and we are. So we have these practice groups where it is to practice connecting in and finding ventral, so we become so familiar with what ventral is. And now as I become so familiar with what ventral is, it becomes a lot easier to know when I'm not there.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
just kind of laugh at myself, or like, okay.
Yeah.
um and maybe I don't, and we don't always know how to get ourselves back. Sometimes Kim and I will take a few days because we're like, this is just something is there, but at least we can name it to say, I might not be there. And the nice thing is, it's not as if you stay stuck for all the time. In this conversation, I've moved into sympathetic, and I've moved into dorsal, and I've been in ventral, and so in this conversation alone, we've moved, and so that will
Well,
happen in our
that's
life.
just called life. I mean, that's being a
Yeah.
human. I mean, we want to experience the full range of emotional functioning and be alive and active and engaged in our environments. We don't want to stay stuck really anywhere. I don't want to stay stuck in ventral either. That doesn't sound very fun. It's like that's like Spock, right?
There is a lot more aliveness in ventral than we realize. I do think
Fair.
the thought is that ventral is like, you can only just sit and meditate. But actually, bringing what we like to call about the ventral umbrella is like if we can find these areas in our life that would normally um be triggering, that and we can learn how to find a more ventral approach to them and they don't necessarily trigger us, those areas become fun. But
Yeah.
they're ever evolving, which means that we're always going to have something come into our lives. And that is exciting. We don't ever want to not have new things come into our lives because then we're going to enter into a dorsal state of being like, what's the purpose? So these different difficulties, challenges, triggers, call them what you may, that come into our lives are actually they're the invitation to grow. They're the
Yeah.
invitation for more self-love and the invitation for evolution and transformation.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Where do people find you?
Theviewlooksgood.com for our website. That would probably be the best place to come find us. We are also on social media, The View Looks Good, on Instagram and Facebook, and LinkedIn, The View Looks Good. Also, we're not particularly good at social media. It's a work in progress for us, but please do come engage with our content on any of those platforms.
Does it threaten you? I'm
It
just
does.
kidding.
Oh, Kim and I have done multiple podcasts on social media and marketing. It's definitely growth.
Awesome. Thank you very much for making the time. I know it's tough with the time difference. You're, like 8 time zones away or something, but I really appreciate it, and it's important. And I'm excited to have this out there. And it's really good to see you again, or see you for the first time, I suppose, because last time we didn't have video. I think we just did audio. We were talking about that earlier. So nice to see you.
Thank you,
Um,
Jake.
Even though we've
Thanks
known
for
each other for
giving
6 years.
the platform. No, thanks for giving the platform to speak and to share what really means a lot to us.
Yeah, I'm glad Safiso reminded me of your existence, because that was that was really nice. So, well, on behalf of our Noggin Notes family and the Zephyr Wellness family that helps make this possible, thank you to Anne for her time, and we wish you all great mental wellness. Bye bye.